No surprise, boom!
Oh.
Yeah, don't adjust your television set, even though I know you're probably watching on a phone or an iPad, the modern day television. It still works. It is not a glitch in the Matrix. Now, kids, we all know that the ChessKid YouTube channel is #1 in your hearts, but I also realize that there's another YouTuber out there who loves to teach this opening, the Caro-Kann. That's right, I'm looking at you, Gotham Chess. But today, I'm going to be the Joker because I'm going to teach every kid out there how to defeat your vaunted opening. Sorry, Gotham, I know we're buddies, but this had to happen. Okay, so somebody plays the Caro-Kann against you because they've been watching that other YouTuber's videos. Here's what I want you to do. Of course, D4 is the most popular move, but we don't want to play right into the main line when somebody has probably been studying this opening. So I want you to play the very reasonable knight to C3, putting the knight on the happy square. By the way, you could also bring the other knight to the other happy square and change up the move order. It matters not. You can put either knight out on the second move. Now, black is going to play D5 because that's what all Caro-Kanners do. They want to attack your center, okay? Now, we're going to play knight F3 again. You could have played knight F3 followed by knight C3. I really don't care the order of operation. This is not... Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And for those of you who are in algebra, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this is not that. Okay, so now black often plays pawn takes pawn. It is true. Black could play this move knight to F6, and, you know, maybe we'll cover that at a later date. But a lot of players here take because, hey, they see pawns aiming at each other, and they capture. And by the way, capturing is not that bad of a move or anything. So, of course, we are going to take back. Now, this knight is super strong. There is a line where black plays the move knight to F6. But, of course, if we just take that knight, black has to take back with either that pawn or that pawn and get double pawns. And a lot of kids just don't like double pawns. I can understand that. So knight F6, not the most popular move when kids are playing each other. Instead, this bishop usually develops. After all, in the Caro-Kann, that bishop does like to come out pretty early. Now, if the bishop ever comes to the square G4, let's get rid of those other arrows. They're getting in my way. Bishop to G4. Well, that bishop usually ends up taking the knight. And when you take back, you just get the bishop here. You could even put up the no parking sign if the bishop comes to G4. So we're not actually that concerned about the move bishop to G4. You could also, of course, play bishop to E2 and unpin yourself. So we're not going to cover that today. We're going to talk about the move bishop to F5, aiming at our knight. Now, I want you to play the move knight to G3, aiming at the bishop. And again, the bishop could come to G4, but if you just play the no parking sign, it pretty much has to capture, and you're just getting the bishop here for free. Notice, by the way, if the bishop comes here, and we play the no parking sign, it can't even go back to H5 because Mr. Knight is waiting. Haha, thank you very much for my breakfast treat. So let's go back. In this position, after knight to G3, I'm going to expect your opponent will play the move bishop to G6, and this is where the fun begins. Oh yes, this is the one that you've been waiting for. We're going to play this move pawn to H4. Yes, we're pushing a pawn on the side of the board because this bishop is running really, really low on squares. In fact, you might have already noticed, if that pawn is allowed to come to H5, this bishop is not long for this world. The bishop is completely trapped. Even if the knight comes to F6 to aim at H5, we can still play H5 because there's 1, 2 attackers, and there's 1, 2 defenders. And remember, if it's a tie, the defending side is the happy side. That bishop looks completely out of squares. I suppose you could come to the square E4, but we at least get the bishop pair, and you could even maybe delay playing H5 and play the move like D3 first and go for H5 later. That is totally possible as well. So what most people do in this position after the move H4 is they play the move H6 to give the bishop a little bit of room. By the way, if the pawn comes to H5 instead of H6 to block your pawn, we're going to play the same next move. And what is that move? We're going to play the move knight to E5. Oh yes, and we're threatening knight takes bishop, which would give black the worst pawn structure in the history of chess. So if black plays some random move, like knight to D7 to aim at our knight, we're going to take the knight. No, we fake you out. We're going to take the bishop. When the pawn takes back, not only does black have double pawns, black also has an isolated pawn, and if you take the pawn on G6, this one right here, this one that I'm drawing a million arrows to, if we take that pawn in any way with a diagonal moving piece, it would be checkmate. Now, would I play bishop to D3 on the next move? Probably not, because it blocks this pawn. But you know what I might do? I might play queen to g4.
Hello.
Oh yeah, because if the queen takes, that is still checkmate. And good luck trying to guard that pawn in the long term. I guess you could play king f7, but then bishop to c4 check. And I don't think that the black king is going to survive for much longer. I guess you could play knight e5, which aims at the queen. And it guards the pawn. But if we just move our queen somewhere, I don't know if e6 is better or e4 or something, the attack continues. We're aiming at the knight. If the knight moves, we take the pawn. And even if you guard the knight, I don't know, queen to d6 or something, then we'll play d4. We'll force your knight to move. We'll get our other bishop in the game.
Hello.
And because we have a light squared bishop and black doesn't, it is a huge advantage for the white pieces. Okay, let's go all the way back, though. That's probably not what's going to happen in this position. Your opponent is not going to let you take and wreck all the pawns. That is an important bishop in the Caro-Kann, and the bishop is probably going to go back to h7. And now, this bishop is kind of in the game. You know, it's kind of aiming at the middle, but it's also kind of buried, and we want to put more dirt on that bishop's grave. We're going to play queen to h5 with the very simple threat of checkmate. Now, we don't actually expect the checkmate to work, but any method that black chooses to get out of the checkmate is going to hurt black's position. Black pretty much has to play g6, and look at this poor bishop. That is the saddest bishop. Remember, that bishop has actually moved 3 times and gotten himself to a worse square than the starting square. Yeah, that's like going to school for 3 years and then coming out knowing less than you came in with. Is that possible? Probably not, because you're a smart chess kid. But in any case, that bishop was not being a very good student, and that is pretty bad. So pawn to g6. Now, you might think, hey, fun mastermind, I've got a better move to guard the weak spot and prevent the queen and help her checkmate. I can actually play queen to d5. The queen moves forward, but she defends backward. Well, that is true. But chess kids, don't just look at your moves, look at your opponent's moves. White has an absolute crusher in this position. Bishop to c4. Yes, bishop to c4. The knight guards the bishop. The bishop aims at the queen, and when the queen moves, there'll actually be a third attacker on this pawn because the bishop just joined the fiesta, and it's going to be a fun day for the white pieces. No matter where you move the queen, I'm taking this pawn, probably with my queen, and there's nothing black can do to survive this position. So let's go back. Queen to d5 is not going to get the job done. Pawn to g6, pretty much the only move left. Now comes super exciting chess. 999 times out of 1,000. When our queen's in danger, I want you to save your queen. However, in that 0.0000001% of positions, you can keep your queen in danger. You can keep her en prise. Hey, I think I rolled my R pretty well there. And in this position, you're going to do that. You're going to play bishop to c4 anyway. That's right. Am I a madman or am I a genius? I'm a genius! Because if the pawn takes the queen, bishop takes f7 is a very cool checkmate. We're down a queen, and we don't care. Throw your arms in the air like you just don't care. The knight guards the bishop. The knight also guards the king's escape hatch. And yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, again, we don't expect it to happen, but that means we got a free developing move while black has to stop the attack on f7 again. And black really only has one move, which is pawn to e6. Now, fun story. I'm going to take a little journey down memory lane. I actually once had this exact position as a junior player. Why? Because my coach taught me this variation, and I went on to beat somebody rated around 1800, even though I was only 8 years old. And I really didn't do any original thinking. I just listened to my coach, I used the opening, and it worked out perfectly. However, I have to give you a truth bomb. Here, I did not play the most accurate move. I played a good move, not the most accurate one. My queen is definitely in danger. We all see that. It is going to be captured now. And I played queen back to f3 because I was so excited about the prospect of reintroducing the checkmate because I have 2 attackers on f7. The only problem with queen f3 is that, number 1, it can be very easily stopped. And number 2, the threat is just so obvious. So in this position, any reasonable player is going to put something on f6. You could put the queen there to trade queens. I think in the actual game that I played, black played knight to f6. And because I had such better development, and this bishop is still blocked in, I did go on to win the game, but it took me a little bit longer than I might have liked. It turns out, let's go back. The most accurate move in this position is the somewhat sneaky, but definitely stronger queen to e2. Now you can imagine why I did not see this move. It looks like my queen is just being blocked by my own knight. But it turns out, after almost any developing move here for black, we're going to get to play the same tactic for white. What do I mean by that? Well, let's pick a regular-looking developing move. Let's say that black plays the move knight f6. If black plays knight f6, we're going to use the fact that our light-squared bishop is developed, this light-squared bishop is in a graveyard, and we're going to play knight takes f7. What a cool sacrifice on black's weak spot. Of course, we're forking the queen and the rook, and if black tries to take our knight, well, we just reduce the defense of the e6 pawn. It was kind of like a discovered attack, too. We moved the knight, which means we opened up the queen.
Hello.
Queen takes pawn check.
Oh.
The king has one legal move, and I bet you can find the checkmate. Oh, yeah, it happens on the weak spot. Queen f7 is checkmate, and it is destruction on the light squares. That's a pretty cool way to win. Now, let's go back. Let's give black a different developing move. Let's say in this position, the knight did not go to f6. Instead, the bishop went to g7. After all, not a bad spot for the bishop. We're fianchettoing the bishop to the middle of the chessboard. We're aiming at the knight, and no surprise, boom!
Oh.
Yeah, don't adjust your television set, even though I know you're probably watching on a phone or an iPad, the modern day television. It still works. It is not a glitch in the matrix. King takes, queen takes pawn check again. Now this time the king has to go back to f8, but it is the exact same checkmate. There is checkmate, but there is no spoon. Okay, let's go back to this position. Again, any developing move with the knight or the bishop is going to lead to knight takes f7. Now, you're probably going to win the game at this point, okay? And Gotham is probably going to stop making Caro-Kann videos after you do that. However, let's just pretend that you're playing Gotham himself, and he knows about the sacrifice on f7, and he defends with a move like, I don't know, queen to c7.
Hello.
That actually is a pretty decent way of defending against the sacrifice. The queen will come over if you play knight takes f7. Now, actually, you might be able to play knight takes f7 anyway, sacrificing a piece for a couple of pawns, but you don't need to. Here, just play d4, solidifying the knight on this awesome square, also helping our bishop get in the game. By the way, you never really have to worry about this pawn coming to f6 because when your knight moves, there's no defense of the e6 pawn. Our bishop will be aiming at it, our queen will be aiming at it, and you're going to end up winning if f6. So your knight gets to enjoy this square for a long time. Now black's going to play some developing move. Let's just say, I don't know, bishop to g7. And we're going to get our final minor piece in the game, bishop to f4, and it is a triumph of the opening for white. All of white's minor pieces are on great squares. Our bishop is lined up with the queen, and can you see the discovered attack that we are threatening? Well, let's just make a move for black. Let's say the black, I don't know, puts the knight on the happy square. In this position, if you move your knight, it's discovered attack. But be careful, because if you move your knight to a random square, the queen will actually take your bishop. So we need to find a knight move that defends the bishop. And don't forget, the knight can pretty much do whatever it wants because black will have to take time out to save the queen. That means the winning move is knight takes g6, a move that we would never play in a regular circumstance because our knight's been attacked twice. But this is not regular. This is discovered attack on the queen. And when the queen moves, we will take the rook. And for all of you chess masters out there who noticed that there's a check, well, that's true. But when you get out of check, if you block at the bishop, you make the queen run away again, thus ensuring that you're going to be able to take this rook on the next turn. There you go. That is how you crush the Caro-Kann. But wait, oh yes, there's more. Because you stuck around to the end, you might think, hey, I'm Master Mike. What if none of these tactics work? What if my opponent is a super defensive genius, the grandson or granddaughter of Tigran Petrosian, and somehow survives the opening? Well, guess what? I have the game to show you. Let's go back to this position. This game was actually played very recently at the last Chess Olympiad. Now, you probably recognize this position because we've already been in it. And remember, white is threatening knight takes f7, followed by queen takes e6, which is going to lead to a checkmate. So, in the game, black played queen e7. Not a bad move. The queen is defending the f7 pawn. However, white has great development. Now, here's why I'm showing you this game. White actually does not win by using any fancy tactics at all. White wins using positional chess. What do I mean? Well, that's where there's no flashy tactics or tricks, but you simply win because some element of your position is much better than your opponent's. Maybe your opponent has weak dark squares or light squares, or maybe, as in this case, your opponent has a really bad piece. Now, if I were to ask you, which one of black's pieces is really bad? Well, you could probably pick any of them, right? Okay, but in this game, it's going to be the bishop. That bishop is buried and remains buried the entire game, and I want to show you how white took advantage of that. In fact, I'm not even going to give you a lot of explanation over White's moves because White just plays totally normal chess. White plays d4, of course, putting a pawn in the center. White develops the bishop to the center, not bad there. White moves the queen over, which double attacks the h6 pawn. Black plays knight to d7. Now, White is not actually in a big hurry to win the pawn. I guess you could be. Nothing wrong with taking the pawn. But instead, White made a trade. White castled to the queen side. That puts the rook, of course, on one of the middle files. Okay. Black played h5, finally saving the pawn. White safeguarded the king. White's playing very conservatively and carefully. Black got the king castled. Now we had bishop to h6. Notice that all of Black's pawns over here are on light squares. So if you get rid of Black's dark squared bishop, which is what White is about to do, that's going to leave Black's dark squares really weak. Okay, so Black played b5 using the correct strategy when kings are castled on opposite sides. Try to get a pawn storm going. Okay, White made a quick trade. The king took that. White saved the bishop. Again, these are not fancy moves. Okay, Black moved the rook over to the half-open file. The queen moved to e3. We had a couple more moves. We're just making moves here. The queen invades. And what I want to show you is in this position. After the move, bishop to e4. This bishop is getting really, really strong, aiming at the black king. So Black decided to get rid of it. But after knight takes, this is a complete triumph of positional chess. Here we have the classic case of good knight versus terrible bishop. In fact, that might be the worst bishop in the history of chess. It is completely blocked by all of its own pawns, whereas this knight is aiming at a bunch of dark squares. That is a really nice outpost that Black will never get the knight out of. Plus, of course, the knight and the queen are teaming up for a queen invasion on f6. There's no way that Black can survive this opening long term. In fact, the news got even worse for the bishop on h7. After rook to d5 and the queen gave a check and the king moved, we had rook to f3. And after rook to f5, White took. And Black took back, and now the bishop is really buried. Now there are actually two pawns in the way of the bishop, and White, of course, is much, much better in the resulting position here. Well, there you go, chess kids. Now you have a really aggressive and fun way to meet the Caro-Kann. And if you ever play Gotham in person, give him a little wink. Let him know that you know something that you're preparing for him.